He was a 17-year-old basketball prodigy. College scouts lined the gym. NBA dreams within reach. But one girl's lie shattered everything. While he spent 10 years behind bars for a crime he didn't commit, she laughed about it years later. But one night, the truth slipped out and everything began to unravel. Welcome to Minority Struggles. If this story hits home, subscribe and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is right now. Now, let's begin the story. Vanessa Lee always believed her son was going to change the world. Not because she was naive or overly proud, but because she saw something rare in him, a spark, a discipline, a kindness that the world rarely cultivates in young black boys. Jalen Lee was different. He was gifted, focused, respectful. While other boys his age were getting into trouble in East Tyler, Texas, Jalen was helping Miss Ruby across the street with groceries and leading his high school team to back-to-back district championships. By the time he turned 17, Jalen was being watched by everyone who mattered in the world of basketball. He was averaging 32 points a game, breaking state records, and his YouTube highlights had racked up over 2 million views. Scouts from Duke, Syracuse, and Kansas had already visited Tyler East High. There were whispers from G League insiders that Jalen might not even need college, that a direct development contract into the NBA was on the table. Coach Ray Daniels, a man known for tough love and low praise, once called Jalen the cleanest floor general I've coached in 20 years. He didn't say that lightly, but none of it went to Jalen's head. He still washed the dishes without being asked, still tucked his mother's sore feet into Epsom salt baths after her long shifts cleaning dental offices. He was her son, her whole world. And then, one Thursday afternoon in early spring, that world came crashing down. Vanessa was on her lunch break at Trinity Medical Center when her phone rang. It was the school. The voice on the other end was clipped, tense. "Mrs. Lee, we need you to come to the office immediately. It's about Jalen." By the time she arrived at Tyler East High, Jalen was already in handcuffs. He sat outside the principal's office on a bench, flanked by 2 police officers. His face was blank. His hands trembled slightly, but he didn't cry. He didn't speak. "What's going on?" Vanessa asked, panic rising in her throat. They pulled her into a closed-door meeting with the principal, the school board liaison, and an officer from Tyler PD. A student, Brittany Collins, had accused Jalen of misconduct. She claimed he had followed her into the locker room after practice and made her feel unsafe. She said he touched her, that she screamed, that he ran. Vanessa blinked, stunned. What locker room? Practice wasn't even scheduled today. They ignored her. Brittany's father was on the school board. Her mother chaired the PDA. Their family had influence and money. Jalen was suspended on the spot. The words "pending investigation" were repeated like a shield, but everyone in that room knew what it really meant. A decision had already been made. The media caught the story by the next morning. Local news stations ran headlines like "Tyler High Star accused in locker room incident." They didn't say allegedly. They didn't wait for a statement. They just dragged Jalen's face through every screen in the county. Within 72 hours, he was expelled. The athletic committee revoked his eligibility. Scholarship offers vanished. Calls from agents stopped. 1 week earlier, Jalen had been speaking with a scout from the Charlotte Hornets. Now, silence. Coach Ray Daniels showed up at their doorstep with a manila folder full of gym records and the week's practice schedule. "Vanessa," he said, "I locked that locker room myself. Practice was canceled because of the busted water pipe. There's no way he could have been there." He offered to speak on Jalen's behalf at the school hearing. 2 days later, the district placed him on leave. By the end of the month, Coach Ray was out of a job. Meanwhile, Vanessa scrambled to find a lawyer. But the attorneys she called asked for retainer fees she couldn't afford. They ended up with a court-appointed defender, a tired, overworked man who couldn't remember Jalen's middle name. In court, he barely spoke, never once challenged the school's timeline, never brought up the faulty security cameras, never questioned how Jalen could have accessed a locker room that, by all reports, had been locked. The prosecutor painted Jalen as a dangerous mix of athletic ego and unchecked power. He had access. He had opportunity. He had motive, the man said without flinching. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty. Vanessa tried to grab Jalen's arm before they led him away. She screamed until her voice cracked, until her legs gave out. Jalen didn't resist. He looked at her once, his eyes glassy and hollow. "It's okay, Mama," he said. "I know you believe me." They took him to juvenile detention that night. He was 17. Vanessa visited every weekend. She rode the Greyhound to Austin, sat across from her baby in plastic chairs, and watched the weight of the accusation turn him from a boy into a man she barely recognized. After he turned 18, he was transferred to adult prison. That's when he stopped letting her visit. He told her it was too hard seeing her cry, so she wrote letters instead. Every week, she sent him articles about basketball, updates on Coach Ray, reminders that she was still there, still fighting. But inside, Vanessa worried. Not just about how to prove his innocence, but about who he'd become if the world never let him prove it. 10 years passed. 10 long years of unanswered emails, denied appeals, and closed doors. Then, one night, everything changed, and the world finally heard what Vanessa had been screaming all along. After the trial, Vanessa Lee packed up their life in Tyler and moved 2 towns over to Lufkin. Not because she wanted to start over, but because she had no choice. Jalen's name had been plastered across every TV screen and local headline. Her neighbors stopped waving. Strangers whispered in parking lots. Even the women at the church she once led prayer meetings with began crossing the street when they saw her. Her son was in prison, but the world had made her carry the sentence too. At first, Jalen wrote letters. Long ones, with box scores and doodles in the margins. He talked about his cellmate, the books he was reading, the prison leagues they let them play in every other week. But slowly, the letters started shrinking. The jokes faded. The ink turned cold. The last letter Vanessa received that year read, "I don't need reminders of the life I lost." She still sent letters every week. Still wrote to every legal aid clinic, every innocence project, every civil rights organization that would let her pass the phone menu. Most never responded. The few who did send polite but firm rejections. Without new evidence, we cannot reopen a closed case. As if the truth had an expiration date. Vanessa kept every denial in a drawer labeled, "Not yet." She didn't have connections. She didn't have power. But she had a mother's fire, and she had Coach Ray Daniels. Ray called once a month like clockwork. Even after being quietly let go from Tyler East High, he stayed close to Jalen's case. He kept copies of gym schedules, email exchanges with the athletic department, even photos of the busted pipes that shut down practice the day Brittany said Jalen attacked her. "Still no updates?" he'd ask. "Not yet," she'd answer. Then he'd pause and say, "I've still got the keys to the rec center, by the way. It's still standing." They kept each other alive with those check-ins. Not just as advocates, but as 2 people who couldn't let go of the boy the world had buried. By the time Jalen turned 21, he had been transferred to Ferguson Unit, a maximum security prison near Huntsville. Vanessa took the 5-hour bus ride every other weekend, sat in those echoey visitation rooms, and watched her son's posture tighten, his voice slow, his laughter vanish. His eyes were always tired. By year 5, he asked her to stop coming. "It's too hard seeing your face when I can't come home with you." So she stopped visiting. But she didn't stop fighting. She called the Tyler District Attorney's office every 3 months. Reached out to 3 new law schools every year. She never stopped digging. Never stopped hoping someone, anyone, would care enough to listen. 10 years passed. Then, one Friday night, everything changed. Vanessa had just finished folding laundry. The silence in the house was heavy that evening. That exact date marked a decade since Jalen had been taken. The ache never got easier. It just settled deeper. At 9:37 p.m., her phone buzzed. A message from Khalil, Jalen's best friend from childhood, now living in Dallas. "Check TikTok. She's live. Trust me." Vanessa clicked the link. There on screen was Brittany Collins. Older now, blonder, sitting in a granite kitchen, giggling with 2 wine-soaked friends. Her phone was propped up on the counter, live streaming to over 40,000 people. They were talking about high school, old boyfriends, who got fat, who got hot. Then someone brought up that scandal. One of the girls laughed. "Didn't you get someone expelled or something?" And Brittany rolled her eyes and said, "Oh, that? Yeah, I made that up. I had to. My parents would have killed me if they knew I snuck out that night. So I blamed this kid. Jalen. It worked. He got expelled. Whatever. She laughed. They all laughed. Vanessa dropped the phone. Her body stiffened like she'd been hit. Her hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the counter. Her ears rang. Her mouth went dry. Her heart felt like it had stopped and restarted with fire. She picked the phone back up, hit record, and saved the live stream. Then she called Khalil. He answered immediately. You saw it. She couldn't speak. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She just nodded, as if he could feel it through the line. By morning, Khalil had downloaded the full stream. He blasted it across Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. He tagged news stations, black legal defense groups, and every influencer he could find. The video exploded. Coach Ray was at her door by noon. I've been waiting 10 years for this, he said. Let's move. Even Pastor Elijah, the same pastor who had once told her, let the system work, came by that evening, hat in hand, eyes full of regret. I didn't stand by you back then, he said quietly, but I'd like to help now. The video passed 1 million views in 24 hours. Then 2 million. People were furious, not just at Brittany, but at the system, at the silence, at how fast it had thrown a child away. On day 3, Vanessa got a call from a woman named Aisha Mendez, a young civil rights lawyer working with the Innocence Defense Foundation in Houston. I saw the video, Aisha said, and I read everything I could find on Jalen's case. You have more than enough for emotion. Another call came from Detective Marcus Rowe, now retired. He told Vanessa he had quietly held onto the case records, ones that had been flagged as closed and sealed, but he never deleted them. And now he wanted help. He still had gym schedules, security logs, and internal memos showing that the cameras near the locker room weren't working that week. He even had Jalen's school attendance record from the day in question, and it showed that Jalen hadn't even signed in for school that day. Within a week, Aisha filed the motion. Within a month, a hearing was scheduled. After 10 years in a cage of silence and injustice, Jalen Lee was getting another chance. And this time, he wasn't walking in alone. The courtroom was packed. It had been 10 years since Jalen Lee's name was in the public eye, but the livestream confession had pulled everyone back in. Reporters lined the back wall with cameras mounted on tripods. A quiet crowd of supporters, activists, former teachers, neighbors, even a few strangers from the community filled the benches. Coach Ray Daniels sat in the front row, eyes sharp. Khalil flew in from Dallas and stood in the hallway with folded arms and burning silence. Pastor Elijah knelt in a back pew, whispering prayer. Jalen stood at the defense table beside his lawyer, Aisha Mendez, looking leaner than he once was, more stone-faced, more still. He wore a borrowed gray suit, one size too big in the shoulders, and shoes that didn't quite match. But he held his head up. Vanessa sat behind him, hands shaking in her lap, watching the son she raised stand in front of the same system that once erased him. The judge, an older black woman with a sharp bob and reading glasses halfway down her nose, looked out over the courtroom and addressed the room with precision. Mr. Lee's original conviction, she said, was based entirely on the testimony of one student, a testimony that has now been publicly contradicted by that same individual in a live-streamed video viewed by over 4 million people. The prosecution tried to argue that the video wasn't legally admissible. They claimed Brittany had been intoxicated, that she was speaking in jest, that her words were taken out of context. But Aisha was ready. She stepped forward with calm resolve. Your Honor, she said, the witness in question stated, clearly, unprovoked, and on camera, that she fabricated her statement. She explained her motive. She detailed her lie. She laughed about the outcome. This was not ambiguous. It was not sarcasm. It was a confession. She played the video on a monitor at the front of the courtroom. Brittany's voice echoed through the chamber. Oh, that? Yeah, I made that up. I had to. My parents would have killed me if they knew I snuck out that night. So I blamed this kid, Jalen. It worked. He got expelled. Whatever. A hush fell over the room. No one moved. Then Aisha called her witnesses. Detective Marcus Rowe took the stand first. Now retired, he sat in the box with old case files in his lap. The surveillance cameras outside the locker room had been reported as non-functional that week. That was known by staff, but ignored. Additionally, Mr. Lee's school attendance log shows he wasn't even present on campus the day the incident was reported. That was also left out of the trial. Then came Coach Ray. He walked to the stand, holding the original gym schedule from 10 years earlier. Practice had been canceled that day due to a water main leak, he said. I locked the locker room myself. No students, male or female, were allowed in that wing of the building. Jalen wasn't even at school. I submitted that information to the administration. It never made it into the court record. The final witness was Pastor Elijah. He stepped to the stand with his Bible tucked under one arm and guilt written all over his face. I failed that boy, he said quietly. I chose silence when I should have spoken. Jalen was a leader in our youth ministry. Respectful, humble, a role model. I believe the lie because it came dressed in privilege. I regret it every day. Then the judge asked if Jalen wanted to speak. He stood up slowly, looked straight ahead. His voice was steady but low. I lost 10 years of my life, 10 years of my youth, 10 years I can't get back. I didn't ask for money. I didn't ask for revenge. I just want the truth on record. He sat down. The judge nodded, then adjusted her glasses and read the ruling. In light of new, publicly documented evidence, including a recorded confession and substantial corroborating testimony, this court hereby vacates the original conviction of Jalen Isaiah Lee. The charges are dismissed. The defendant is exonerated. There were gasps. A few people clapped. Others just wept quietly. Vanessa stayed frozen in place, her eyes locked on her son. It wasn't joy she felt. Not yet. It was release. A quiet, aching release. She rose to her feet as Jalen turned to her. They embraced at the center of the courtroom. No words, just breath and tears and shaking arms that refused to let go. They walked out of that building together, hand in hand. The cameras swarmed. Jalen, do you forgive her? Will you sue? Do you have a message for Brittany? Will you return to basketball? Jalen said nothing, just kept walking. They didn't know the world an answer. But what none of them expected, not that day, was what Brittany Collins did next. While the world was still trying to process Jalen's exoneration, she filed a lawsuit against the Tyler Independent School District. She claimed the school had pressured her into making a statement as a teenager, that they had mishandled the investigation and damaged her psychologically, that she had been traumatized by the media fallout. And somehow, the court agreed. She was awarded $1.5 million in damages. She never apologized. She never stood trial. She never spent a single night behind bars. She walked away with a check. And Jalen? Jalen walked away with 10 years of stolen time, and a name that people still debated online like it was just another trending case. Some said Brittany was just a kid. Others said, it's not that simple. A few asked, well, can we really know what happened back then? As if her own voice hadn't said it all. Jalen didn't respond to any of it. He deleted all his social media, refused every interview request, started sleeping on the pull-out couch in Vanessa's living room again. He cooked his own meals, took walks at night, lived quiet. He was free, but not the way people meant it. He didn't smile. He didn't speak much, but something had shifted, a flicker, a beginning. The world called it a victory, but to Jalen Lee, it didn't feel like one. The morning after the exoneration, he woke up on the pull-out couch in his mother's living room in Lufkin, staring at the same ceiling he hadn't seen since high school. He lay there in silence, not because he didn't have anything to say, but because no one had listened for so long, he didn't know how to speak without pain echoing back. Reporters camped outside the building for 2 days. Vanessa kept the blinds drawn and declined every interview request. The phone rang every hour. She answered none of them. Jalen barely left the house. He didn't eat much. Didn't sleep well either. He would sit on the porch at night, watching the still trees, sometimes flinching at passing sirens, whispering, I didn't do it, like the verdict hadn't already said it for him. On the third night, he scrolled through his phone and came across a headline. Brittany Collins receives $1.5 million settlement in school district lawsuit. He clicked the article. Her lawyers had argued that the district pressured her to identify a suspect, as a minor and failed to provide trauma support afterward. They called her a victim of systemic mishandling. The court had awarded her damages without ever referencing the viral video that showed her laughing about the lie. She had flown to Cancun the next day. Jalen saw the photos. Brittany, lounging poolside, holding a champagne flute, captioned, "Finally healing." He locked the phone and set it face down on the table. Vanessa, sitting nearby, folding laundry, watched him quietly. "She's living better now than before," he muttered. Vanessa didn't respond. What was there to say? Then he stood up and walked outside. He didn't slam the door, didn't raise his voice, just disappeared into the night air and didn't come back for 2 hours. When he returned, his shoulders looked different, tighter, but his jaw was set. "I want to see the gym," he said. Vanessa blinked. "The rec center?" Coach Ray said he still has a key. They let him run weekend programs for little kids. The next morning, they drove to Tyler. Back to the old neighborhood. The rec center hadn't changed much. The sidewalk still cracked near the entrance. The old rusted fence still leaned against the wind. But as soon as Jalen stepped through the double doors, something flickered behind his eyes. The court was dusty. The hoops were bent, but it was still sacred. Coach Ray was already there, standing near the sideline, arms crossed. He didn't say anything at first, just nodded. "You still shoot?" he asked. Jalen didn't answer. He walked over to the rack, picked up a ball, and started dribbling. The sound echoed through the gym like a memory trying to find its place. Then he stepped back and shot from the corner. Swish. Coach Ray smiled. "Still got it." Jalen didn't smile, but he kept shooting. Again. 12 in a row. His form hadn't changed. His body remembered, even if his soul hadn't caught up. After about an hour, a group of boys burst through the doors. No older than 12, they ran toward Coach Ray, grabbing jerseys from a pile on the floor. They didn't notice Jalen at first, just another adult in the gym. But then one of them looked up and said, "You coaching today, Coach J?" Jalen froze, looked at Coach Ray. "You told them I was coming. I said a legend might show up." The kids laughed and crowded around him, handing him a ball, asking him how to shoot floaters. They didn't know what happened. They didn't care. They just wanted to learn. For the first time in years, Vanessa saw Jalen smile. It wasn't wide, but it was real. He started showing up every Saturday. He volunteered for drills, helped with footwork, taught defense, talked the boys through pressure situations. He didn't mention prison, didn't bring up the trial. He just coached. Within a month, they gave him a clipboard and a whistle. The kids called him Coach J. At night, he came home tired, sore, but lighter. He started cooking again, playing music in the kitchen, eating without being reminded. Vanessa didn't say anything. She just let it happen. But the world hadn't forgotten. People still argued online. Some defended Brittany, said she was just a kid. Others claimed the video was taken out of context. There were still blog posts, still think pieces, still debates on whether Jalen had really been innocent. They ignored the video, ignored the confession, ignored the facts. One day, a small black-owned podcast in East Texas reached out. They wanted Jalen to tell his story, his way. At first, he declined, but Coach Ray nudged him. They got a real audience. People who care. Jalen agreed. He didn't rehearse. He didn't bring notes. He just sat in front of the mic and spoke. "I was 17 when they took everything from me," he said. "I didn't just lose basketball. I lost my name, my future, my faith." He paused. "But I didn't lose myself. Not completely. My mama kept me grounded. My coach kept believing. And now, I coach kids who look at me and don't see a label. They just see a man who shows up." The host asked if he wanted Brittany to be punished. Jalen shook his head. "She already got paid. Nothing's going to undo what happened. I'm not chasing her. I'm chasing peace." That clip, just 1 minute long, went viral. Millions watched. Thousands commented. Celebrities reposted. A few former NBA players even reached out, offering encouragement. But none of it gave him back what he'd lost. He'd missed 10 birthdays, his grandmother's funeral, his cousin's wedding, 10 entire seasons of the game he loved. Gone. After the interview, Jalen came home and sat on the porch. Vanessa brought him tea, sat beside him. He looked out at the night sky and said, "They'll never give me justice, Mama." She didn't argue. Instead, she said softly, then build your own. He nodded. Not in bitterness. Not in defeat. In clarity. Because if the world wasn't going to give him justice, then he'd build something no court could ever erase. After the podcast went viral, the media came knocking again. National outlets wanted to interview Jalen Lee. Some framed it as an inspirational redemption story. Others called it a cultural reckoning. Vanessa read the headlines and shook her head. They were all late. 10 years late. And none of them had offered a word of apology. Jalen didn't respond to any of the requests. He ignored the calls, deleted the emails. He only agreed to one interview with KTXS Local 12, a black-owned station in Tyler that had quietly covered his story back when everyone else looked away. The reporter, a woman named Simone Harris, asked for nothing scripted. She met him at the rec center. No makeup crew, no lights, just a camera, a bench, and a mic. What do you want to say to Brittany Collins? She asked. Jalen took a long breath. I hope she sleeps well at night, he said. Because I don't. He looked straight into the lens. I lost everything. I missed 10 years. I missed my grandma's funeral. My best friend's wedding. I lost a game I loved. And she got richer for it. He paused, voice low but steady. The system let her lie. And then it paid her for it. That 30-second clip hit harder than anything else that week. It cut through the noise. No music, no editing, no hashtags. Just truth. Within days, the video had over 10 million views. Still, no charges were filed. No lawsuits were reopened. No accountability came knocking. And Jalen? He went back to work. Each week, more boys signed up for the Saturday clinic at the rec center. Parents brought them early and stayed late, just to talk to the man the community now called Coach J. They didn't ask about his past. They asked about drills, discipline, and scholarships. The rec center became his second home. He taught footwork, mindset, and responsibility. When one of the boys got suspended from school, Jalen drove to his house and asked to speak with him and his mom. He didn't scold, he listened. And then he asked the boy to show up at 6 a.m. the next day to run drills in silence. The boy came back every week after that. Coach Ray helped when he could. His knees weren't what they used to be, but he still had a whistle and a clipboard. Khalil visited from Dallas once a month and brought sneakers for the kids who couldn't afford them. Even Pastor Elijah donated portable fans and helped patch a hole in the roof. The community that had once turned its back had started showing up again, this time with open hands. Jalen never smiled too wide, never laughed too loud, but he was present. One afternoon, while folding laundry, Vanessa got a text from Khalil. It was a screenshot from Instagram. Brittany Collins. She was standing at a book signing table in Austin, holding up a hardcover copy of her new memoir, Breaking the Silence, healing from a story the media got wrong. In the caption, she wrote, "No one ever asked me how it felt to be 17 and scared. I was a victim too." Jalen saw the post later that night. He didn't react, just slid the phone across the table and went to his room. Vanessa followed him. "She's rewriting history," she said. Jalen looked up. She never had to tell the truth. The world let her leave that part out. He turned away, his shoulders tense. But then he said something that caught her off guard. "I don't want revenge, Mama. I want a future." She nodded slowly. "What does that future look like?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Maybe a gym. A real one. A training center where kids like me get a shot before the world labels them." It was the first time since his release that he'd said the word future out loud. And he meant it. A few weeks later, a woman named Mrs. Rita Martinez, whose grandson was in Jalen's Saturday camp, donated 2 brand new hoops to the rec center. "I don't know everything about what happened to you," she told him, "but I know a good man when I see one." The following Saturday, 5 more kids joined. Jalen started coming home late. Not from partying, from planning. He drew up practice routines on notebook paper, researched coaching, certification programs, printed out drills, called in favors from old teammates. Vanessa started seeing the old Jalen again, the boy who used to tape NBA posters to the wall and practice free throws with the lights off. But now he was different, older, wiser, and carrying more weight than any man his age should have to. Then, one morning, a letter arrived from a sports nonprofit out of Houston, Legacy Sports Foundation. They had seen the podcast and the KTXS clip. They were offering a micro-grant to support community-led athletic programs in East Texas. The application deadline was 2 weeks away. Jalen spent every night working on it. He didn't ask Vanessa for help, but he left the papers on the table like he wanted her to read them. In his final paragraph, he wrote, "We tell kids to rise above, to push through, but we don't always give them places to do that. I want to build that place, not just for them, for the version of me the world never let grow." He hit submit the night before the deadline. Then he went to sleep early for the first time in years. Vanessa stood in the doorway that night and watched him, his chest rising and falling, the soft sound of peace returning to a body that had known too much chaos. The world had stolen a decade from her son, but every day he was taking something back. One kid, one drill, one lesson at a time. 8 months had passed since the judge vacated Jalen Lee's conviction and the world finally learned the truth. 8 months since Vanessa Lee stood beside her son outside the courthouse, gripping his hand as if it were the only thing keeping her from falling. In that time, Jalen hadn't given a TED Talk. He hadn't written a book. He hadn't launched a foundation or gone on a press tour. He just got up, tied his laces, and went back to the only place that had ever made sense, the court. The city of Tyler awarded a small development grant to the East Tyler Rec Center after a college student's short documentary on Jalen, 10 years, no apology, went viral online. The court in the old gym got resurfaced. New lights were installed. The warped bleachers were replaced, and a storage room was converted into an office. Coach Ray Daniels handed Jalen the keys without ceremony one morning. "You earned this a long time ago," he said. They renamed the program Second Chance Hoops. The name wasn't just branding, it was personal. Jalen now ran drills 6 days a week. On Sundays, he rested. But even then, he often showed up to unlock the doors for boys who had nowhere else to go. Coach Ray helped on the days his knees cooperated. Khalil still visited from Dallas every month, bringing pizza, socks, and bags of old basketballs. Vanessa came by every other Saturday with sandwiches and bottled water. Jalen never asked for a title. He didn't care about being called founder or director. Everyone called him Coach J. That was enough. To the kids, he was a mentor, a teacher, a force. He didn't just train them to shoot. He trained them to stand up straighter, speak with confidence, walk away from fights without feeling weak. He told them what no one had told him when he was their age. The world will try to define you before you even open your mouth. So make sure your game, your discipline, and your name speak louder. One Thursday afternoon, Jalen sat alone in the gym after practice, sweeping the court. A woman in heels walked in, holding a microphone and a press badge. She introduced herself as a reporter from a national magazine, doing a follow-up on wrongful convictions. Jalen leaned on the broom and said nothing. She asked, "Do you still think about Brittany?" He didn't hesitate. "Every day," he said, "not because I'm bitter, because I live in the hole she dug, but I'm building stairs out of it." The quote went viral again. But this time, the comments were different. No arguments. No, we don't really know what happened. No pity. Just people listening. People learning. One of the parents at the rec center, moved by the story, launched a GoFundMe. It raised $75,000 in 2 months to build an outdoor court for summer tournaments. Still, none of it could return what was lost. Jalen had missed 10 birthdays, 10 Christmases, 10 seasons of basketball he never got to play. He missed his grandmother's funeral, missed his cousin's wedding, missed the world changing around him while he sat inside a cell, branded as something he never was. And Brittany? She was now a minor celebrity in her own niche corner of the internet. She ran a women's foundation, appeared on podcasts, sold signed copies of her memoir, and hosted healing retreats in the Hill Country. She had never apologized, never been charged, never once reached out. Sometimes, late at night, Vanessa thought about writing Brittany a letter, not to shame her, but to ask, "Do you know what you did? Do you care?" But then she'd look out the window and see the lights still on at the gym across the street, and she'd remember. Jalen didn't need her words. He had written his own. One afternoon in June, he walked into the house and handed Vanessa an envelope. She opened it and pulled out a flyer. It was professionally printed. Simple. Bold. Second Chance Hoops Presents. The Jalen Lee Invitational. a citywide tournament for boys ages 12 to 18. Sponsored by East Texas Storm, Legacy Sports Foundation, and Rosewood Athletics. Vanessa read it twice, then looked up at her son with tears in her eyes. "You're building it," she whispered. Jalen nodded. From the ground up, the first tournament was scheduled for August. 12 teams, full-day games, guest coaches, scholarships pledged to standout players. Local news agreed to cover it. Parents donated chairs. The barbershop down the block offered free haircuts to players the day before the tournament. It was real, all of it. The same boy the world had once erased was now drawing a blueprint for a future none of them had seen coming. He still had bad days, still flinched when he heard sirens, still locked his bedroom door at night, and sometimes slept with the hallway light on. But he was free, not just legally, spiritually, emotionally, fully. Some people still said justice was served, but Vanessa knew better. Justice would have stopped the lie before it spread. Justice would have punished the one who told it. Justice would have held someone, anyone, accountable. What Jalen got wasn't justice. What he got was backup. A mother who never stopped fighting. A coach who refused to stay quiet. A best friend who made the truth go viral. A truth that refused to stay buried. It tried to erase him, but he picked up every broken piece and turned into something no court, no check, no headline could take away again. Not a name, not a title, a purpose.